Hello, welcome to Language Requirements for Accreditation. My name is Jenny Hansen, and I'm happy to introduce this topic to you. Many of us choose to specialize in regions that do not speak our native language. Regardless of where you choose to focus your expertise, remember that the past is a foreign country. That means that language does not translate directly from the present to records of our ancestors. So studying language will be helpful to you as you prepare for accreditation. A little bit of background about me. I'm accredited in Denmark and have been since 1999. I currently serve as the ICAPGen Commissioner over Public Relations, and I also sit on the Presentation Committee. I'm a freelance researcher, instructor, and writer, and I love teaching people how to improve their genealogy skills. In the Guide to Accreditation, we read, an accredited candidate should be able to accurately transcribe and translate documents from their chosen region from a variety of time periods and with a variety of script styles. This may seem like a tiny thing, or it may seem super overwhelming. Sometimes it's still overwhelming for me, and I have been doing this for a very long time. This does not need to be a quest for perfection, but strategic practice will provide the necessary preparation for becoming an accredited researcher. I still get asked all the time, how well do I need to know the language? Well, let me tell you a little bit about my skills with Danish. I took several Danish courses at a university level, and I wouldn't say I was ever fluent, but I could get by conversationally pretty well. Fast forward to today, many, many years later, and I have a hard time remembering how to count to 10, but I can tell you how to say smallpox and illegitimate child. So the whole point of that little story is just to relate that we need to have a working knowledge of genealogical terms. We don't expect you to ever be able to sit down and have a good conversation with a native speaker, but you need to be able to find your way around the records. Further in the Guide to Accreditation, we see these requirements. The candidate should show competence in the following: identifying common record types for your region, extracting genealogical information from the records, translating basic records, abstracting genealogical information from records, and recognizing regional record types. So let's look at what each of these mean in a little bit more detail. Identifying common records. So what type of records will you use the most frequently? This is going to change with every single region. Can you read the records from a variety of time periods? This is a great place for you to start practicing. Read through record collections, regardless of whether they relate to your ancestor. Just open up some church records and start reading through. Open some land records, some tax records, whatever it may be that applies most to your area, and just practice reading. See if you can get the pertinent information. See if you can find your way around. See how many pages you can get through before you're completely lost. The more you do this, the better you're going to get. Extracting genealogical information. Can you look at a record and pull the most important information? Do you know what to expect to find in each record? And can you even find your way around a record genealogically speaking? When we're talking about record extraction, we don't need every single thing that is in that record. We want you to be able to find the most important things and do it in a manner that is very time sensitive. Similarly, can you create an abstract? The YouTube channel includes videos with a lot of details about transcriptions, abstractions, translations, all of that. You may want to view those videos to learn more about the specific requirements of each. I'm not going to repeat that information here because there are quality videos already prepared. So let's talk about translating basic records. When you see a foreign language record, does it totally throw your confidence? Or can you look at a record in a different language and still know what to expect from that record? Can you find your way around the words and locate the pertinent information? Language translation tools are helpful, and we're going to talk about those more in a little bit. But basic language skills in your brain should be your goal. The records most commonly used in your area of expertise should be such a comfortable place for you. We want you to be able to open those books and find your way through and not have any sense of panic. You need to know those records, become familiar with the information that they hold, have no fear about jumping in and using them, know how to navigate them, and that requires some language familiarity and familiarity with the terms found in them. The accreditation exam is not meant to trap you. Remember, we're trying to be your friends and we want you to succeed, but we need you to be competent. The test is not written with the hardest possible records, but you're still going to have records that you have to have some skills to be able to manage. We want you to succeed, but you've got to put in the work beforehand to be prepared. The ICAPGen website has help for you to know what you need for your regional language requirements. When you come to the page that lists all of these areas for accreditation, you're going to see some specifics for each of the regions. When you'll see this area that says click here, and notice I have an arrow there because it doesn't stand out. You got to know it's there, but you click there and it's going to take you to the page you need. Once I click, then I can see this table that shows me all the different countries throughout. This page in particular is focused on Central Europe. But when I look at these different countries, it's going to show me the languages that I need to be familiar with to be able to transcribe, translate, abstract, so that I know what to expect when I get onto that exam. Again, we're not trying to trick you, but you just need to be prepared. These are just the first and the end of that list at the table so that you can have an idea of the variety of languages and skills that are required. So notice with these US regions, just because it says that English is the language, it doesn't mean that the terms and handwriting are going to necessarily be familiar. Of course, you're going to need to know some legal terms, and that older handwriting does not look like the way we write today. So we'll talk about that more in just a bit. There are some roundabout ways to help you become more familiar with the language of the areas that you are choosing to specialize in. You're going to want to learn more about the country, the people, and the history of your region. These are very helpful ways for you to know about the different influences that will be found on the records. One example of these backdoor ways of getting to know the language and the culture might be to read some histories of the area. An overview is great. Consider histories of different time periods that affected your region. Also, historical fiction can be very helpful for understanding context. Documentaries, historical films, those can also be another way that is an enjoyable format for you to learn more about your region. The history element of genealogy is huge. That's actually what got me into doing family history. As an expert, you have the opportunity to add context that the average person might miss. So consider wars, economic influences, outside events that impacted the people in your region. Today, we are impacted by global events, and the same was true of our ancestors, if not on the scale that we experience today. Online resources for language help just keep getting better and better. So let's talk about some of these great tools that you can find at home at your own convenience. My favorite ones are even free. So be thinking of other online tools that you could use to improve your language skills. This is just meant to get you thinking. Brigham Young University has developed some script tutorials. This is one of my favorite secret gems. People seem to not know about these. They're free to use. The web link can be found easily just by Googling BYU script tutorial. When you come to the page, this is what the front looks like. As you scroll down, you can see the current languages included, and they keep adding to this, and it's improving all the time. So when I'm working with my Scandinavian languages, I like to use this German documents language tutorial, but you'll notice they have them even for Old English, Spanish, Russian, French, Italian, and notice Latin in particular. These script tutorials are fantastic because they walk you through practices to become more familiar with the handwriting. So I want you to look at this left menu. These are the types of help that you can get from the lessons. We all face language challenges, even if you're working within your native language. So remember, the context of time is going to change words, handwriting styles, meanings, documents, and more. Another one of my favorite tools for language are the family history, or excuse me, the Family Search Research Wiki. These pages for each different country or region, or honestly even language, can provide some really great tools for translation and for handwriting. Just for an example, here is what the page for Denmark looks like. And all the countries included in the Research Wiki are set up somewhat like this. You'll see the flag on the left side, excuse me, on the right side of the page. And as you scroll through the page, you'll see these language tools. The Danish genealogical word list is the one that I want to point out right now. And you can see it right there in the middle. But notice also, Family Search has built in a little bit of a hint for me, and they know that German genealogical words might be helpful, as well as Latin words. I use these word lists all the time. Of course, I know more and more words the more that I work in the records. I become familiar not with just basic terms, but also professions, different descriptions of people, things like this. But this is how everything seems to work. The more you practice, the more proficient you become. It's great to have these lists of genealogical words right at hand. And if I'm unsure of spelling or unsure of what a word says, but I can pick out a few letters, I will frequently come to these genealogical word lists and I can use them to help me figure out words. It seems that nearly everyone runs into Latin at some point. Um, it's the language from the Catholic Church, and that has bled into so many different formats of documents, church records, legal records, etc. We find them everywhere. We don't want to be completely reliant on the word list because it takes a long time to look things up. But having them as a tool in your back pocket is just really helpful. So this page from the Family Search Research Wiki about Latin genealogical words might be useful for you to be familiar with. Know what kinds of things are on there and know how to use this page. One thing that is really helpful about genealogical records is that we become familiar with their structure and the content, and then they become predictable for us. So going back to my Scandinavian research, I know that every parish christening will include a minimum of certain information. Many of these records also have headings for the clerk to fill in the blanks. That seems to be the case for a lot of church records. Even outside of Scandinavia, outside the Lutheran Church, we see these headings that become predictable. So learn what the headings mean. If you can't memorize them, include a translation sheet in your research guide. The Family Search wikis have pages like this that identify the headings of common records. These even exist in U.S. Census records. So look at what record headings you can find for your region and become familiar with them and give yourself a cheat sheet. Make it easy for you to figure this stuff out. You're going to hear this from me many, many times. Just like learning any new skill, practice, practice, practice. And if you get rusty, you'll find that that means you're not practicing enough. You've got to keep using that skill. When you want to learn the language and terms, get in the records and work through them. Jump onto any page of a record group and just start reading. It doesn't have to pertain to your ancestor or to the family you're looking at. When you start using a new record, spend some extra time learning about the structure and the contents of that record group. Invest in this skill. And I know who I'm talking to. You people that are watching are ones that are invested in becoming great at genealogy. You already care, so just commit to being in the records a little bit more. Find ways to keep yourself accountable. You can join a Facebook group for the area where you do research. There are other great community groups based on links within that Family Search Wiki, and also places like Cindy's List. Like-minded researchers will push you to become better. So now when I get a record that looks like this, how am I going to approach it? I've got a different handwriting style and I've got a language that is not my mother tongue. When I see this today, it's actually really easy for me to break it down and read it because I've put in the time to practice. But just like my kids who play the piano, I can sit down and sight read their music without much effort, while it's a really daunting task for them to get through a new piece. When we start something new, it's important to look for patterns. Compare sections of the records and find commonalities. Look at letter formations. Look at patterns in the information recorded. By breaking the records apart like this, the page of tricky handwriting becomes much more manageable. I also like to break out my toolbox. Foreign word lists are really useful. This record has some Latin and a lot of Danish, and lots of abbreviations that were created by a clerk. By spending time reading through a page of records, I can learn how the clerk creates his own unique abbreviations. When I first start looking at a foreign record, I'm not so concerned with getting every word. I start out by looking for names and dates. The other stuff makes more sense once I figure that out. And when I'm better at reading these records, I'm able to figure out more words. These are all examples of word lists that I use every time I do research. I show them to you just so that you have some ideas of what's out there. I found the ones that work well for me. So one tip, remember that genealogical words, especially from the time of our ancestors, are not the most compatible with common languages today. I have a really good Norwegian to English dictionary, but I found that I'm seldom using it anymore because it's normal modern words. I need to know occupations and diseases and weird things like that. So you need to hunt down word lists that will be the most beneficial for you, because when you're on the clock, you don't want to waste time trying to figure out what obscure words mean. Thanks for joining me, and I hope that this quick video has given you some ideas of the language requirements that you will need for accreditation. Good luck, and I know you can do it.